Imagine you're an FBI agent in 1980. You've just been called to the scene of a robbery. You walked into the Depositors Trust Bank in Medford, Massachusetts. The scene is impossible. There's a massive hole in the ceiling of the vault. The thieves didn't just pick a lock, they blasted through 18 inches of reinforced concrete and steel. But here's the kicker. The high-tech silent alarm, it never went off. And as you're standing there investigating the crime, one of the local police officers helping you look for clues is actually the man who robbed the place. This is the story of the 1980 Memorial Day Heist, a $20 million robbery committed not by gangsters, but by the very men sworn to protect the city. Our story begins with Jerry Clemente. To the public, he was a decorated police captain with the Metropolitan District Police. Jerry had understood something about this city, about this department, that most people never get to see. The corruption wasn't buried deep, it wasn't hidden, it was right there on the surface if you knew where to look. And Jerry saw it on his very first day. He was riding patrol with a veteran officer, a man who was supposed to teach him the ropes, show him how to do the job right, and maybe that's exactly what he did. They were rolling through the dark streets late one night when they spotted a man loading stolen furniture into a truck. Jerry reached for his radio. His training was kicking in, but the veteran grabbed his arm. Instead of making a call, instead of making an arrest, the veteran officer steered that cruiser right up alongside the thief, and the two of them, the officer and the man with the stolen furniture, started laughing, joking around, like old friends. Because they were. The thief was an off-duty cop from their own department. When they finally pulled away, the veteran turned to Jerry with a look that wasn't angry. It was cold, measured, like he was explaining a law of physics. "If you ever see a cop taking something," he said, "you keep your mouth shut, do your job, and look the other way." Jerry was silent, but inside something shifted. Because in that moment, Jerry Clemente made a calculation. If the good guys were stealing furniture, he was going to steal something much, much bigger. It started with a phone call. Sergeant Joseph Bangs and a man named Francis O'Leary had a problem. They wanted to rob a TV store in Medford and needed someone who knew alarms. They called Jerry. Jerry listened, and then he told them a TV store wasn't worth the risk, not even close. Jerry had a contact, a man named Thomas Doherty, a lieutenant with the Medford police. Jerry arranged a meeting. The four of them sat down together, and Doherty put something on the table that changed everything. Blueprints. The actual blueprints of the Depositors Trust Bank on High Street in Medford. The vault, the layout, every detail. Now they had a real target. But they needed one more man, a specialist, someone who could handle the most technical part of the job, the alarm. They reached out to Arthur Barrett, known on the streets simply as Bucky. Bucky was a convicted robber, a safecracker, and one of the most skilled alarm men in the Boston underworld. He brought along his own partner, a man known only as Charlie, a vault specialist so careful about his identity that he had nothing in his own name. 6 men, 3 of them cops, and a plan that was either brilliant or completely insane. Probably both.
2 months before the robbery, Bucky went to work. He visited the bank, quietly, carefully. He studied the silent alarm system wire by wire, building a custom electrical device designed to block the signal entirely. It wasn't quick work. Each wire had to be tested individually. The device had to be adjusted and readjusted until Bucky was certain, absolutely certain. Because one mistake meant the alarm goes off, the police come, and everything is over. It took him 2 months to get it right. Meanwhile, Jerry and the crew weren't sitting still either. They visited the area around the bank, walked the streets, watched the patrol cars, noted exactly when officers passed, which routes they took, and how long it took them to come back around. Every detail was logged, every variable accounted for. The plan itself was almost elegant in how simple it looked on paper. Enter through Burns Optical, the small optical store sharing the same building as the bank. Move through the attic. Break through the shared wall between the store and the bank vault. Sledgehammers, carbide drill bits, blowtorches, and for the final 18 inches of steel-reinforced concrete, dynamite. Sandbags would muffle the sound, and the Memorial Day Carnival happening just down the street that weekend would swallow whatever was left. One of their own, Thomas Doherty, still actively serving as a Medford police lieutenant, would stay outside on patrol during the job. Every 30 minutes, he would radio the all clear. They weren't just robbing a bank, they were using the police department itself as cover. The target was never the main cash reserve. It was the safe deposit boxes, over 1,000 of them, filled with cash, jewelry, gold, bonds. On the night of May 24th, 1980, shortly after midnight, the crew gathered. Tools loaded. Doherty called from duty to give the green light. They moved. Jerry picked the lock of Burns Optical. They slipped inside, moved through the dark store in silence, found the attic, crossed over, and reached the wall. Then they started breaking through. For hours that first night, they drilled and hammered and cut. The carnival did its job. Doherty's radio calls kept the street clear, and Bucky's device kept the alarm completely dead. They had made it inside the bank, but the hardest part was still beneath their feet, the vault, buried under the floor, encased in 18 inches of reinforced concrete and steel. They were going to get through it. They positioned the dynamite carefully on the floor directly above the vault, then packed sandbags tightly around it, layer by layer, to drive the force of the blast downward and swallow the sound. Outside, Doherty was still in uniform, still on patrol, still driving his route up and down that street like any other officer on duty that night. Every few minutes he radioed in, watching for other patrol cars, watching for anyone who might be close enough to hear what was about to happen. When the street was clear, completely clear, Doherty gave the signal. They blew the floor. And when the dust settled and the smoke cleared, there was a hole in the floor of that bank large enough for a man to climb through. One by one, they dropped down into the vault below. When they finally broke through into the vault, they went straight for the main safe. And that is when everything went wrong. The safe was almost empty. Just before the holiday, the bank had moved the bulk of its cash to the Federal Reserve. After 2 months of preparation, after the drilling and the dynamite and the sandbags, the main safe held almost nothing worth taking. They stood in that vault, silent, looking at each other. Then they made a decision that showed exactly what kind of men these were. They would come back, the next night and the night after that, every single day of that holiday weekend, and they would go through every safe deposit box in that room until there was nothing left. So they did. 3 nights in a row they returned, box after box after box, prying each one open, taking cash, jewelry, gold, bonds. When it was finally done, they drove to Bangs's house and split the take. Confirmed cash alone, $1.5 million. But the jewelry, the gold, the bonds, the undeclared valuables, investigators would later estimate the real total somewhere between 15 and 25 million.
Tuesday morning. The long weekend was over. The bank opened its doors. Someone walked downstairs, and the world they had so carefully constructed began its slow, quiet collapse. The investigation that followed was unlike almost anything Massachusetts law enforcement had ever seen. Federal investigators looked at the precision of it, the patience, the 2 months of alarm preparation, the inside knowledge of patrol routes, the blueprints, the perfect timing. This wasn't random. This was someone who knew the system from the inside out. But for 4 years,
Nothing stuck. No arrests, no leaks. The code of silence held. Then, in 1986, it all fell apart from within. Bangs had gone off the rails after the heist. Drugs, paranoia, erratic behavior that the others could see but couldn't stop. One night he showed up at Doherty's place with a shotgun, a confrontation. Doherty disarmed him. Investigators looking into that incident searched Bangs' car. In the trunk they found jewelry. Jewelry from the Depositors Trust Vault. Bangs was offered a deal, full immunity in exchange for everything he knew. He took it without hesitation. And just
I'm
like
ready
that,
to tell you
4
everything.
years of silence ended in a single
It all
conversation.
began the night.
Names, dates, the optical store, the attic, the sandbags, the dynamite, the radio calls from Doherty standing outside on active duty while his crew worked inside, the split at Oxford Road. Every single detail came
It all
pouring
began
out.
the night she disappeared.
Jerry Clemente was indicted. On March 18, 1986, after 12 days of trial, he was found guilty. The judge sentenced him to consecutive terms of 18 to 20 years in state prison. Standing in that courtroom, the judge looked directly at Jerry and said what most people in that room were already thinking.
This defendant is a disgrace to every honest, decent, hard-working police officer.
Doherty was convicted separately. O'Leary was charged. The crew that had spent months planning the perfect crime watched it unravel because one of their own simply could not hold himself together.